Hello everyone, this is Shadow Radio here on Friday, January 9th, 2015. I decided to do this show in the morning here so you folks can listen to this during your workday, help you get through that Friday. We have a new format for the show. We're going to do a bi-weekly show from now on, Fridays and Sundays, so you can listen to the Sunday show on your way to work in the morning on Monday. We all know how much Monday stinks, so we'll try to get you some fun stuff. Keep those questions coming, though. We had some really good questions here for Shadow Radio show number 4. First, we're going to do some announcements today. The Shadow Radio site's up and running full now, so you can see all the radio schedules and when the shows are aired. You can download the shows. We also have a show notes section. In here, we're going to put some information that we don't really get to on the show, or that there's some questions post-show. So after the show, if there's some questions that need answering or whatnot, we're going to go ahead and we're going to stick them in there. Now, remember that Shadow Radio is not a scripted show, so I do this just on the fly. So you'll hear me pause and whatnot every now and then, so just cut me a little bit of slack. I think it's a bit more personal than having some scripted show like a commercial reading off on a cue card. So we're going to do some announcements. You can also email your questions. If you don't want to post on the community, just email your questions to me and we'll get to them. The more questions, the better. Don't forget, too, I just set up a nice Ustream account for live broadcasting. So we might do some live broadcast every now and then with some social engineering tricks, going out into public and, doing a live broadcast. And we'll see how that works. We're going to play around with the format a little bit. And remember, the show topics, they do come from your posts. So please keep them topics coming and keep posting in the information security community so we can find out what's trending and get to know what people want to talk about. We're going to go ahead with the news today, how Windows was exploited in 2014. Well, that's a simple answer. I don't even have to read the story. It's because they didn't patch their software. So let's go check that out and see if that's right. Oh, well, what do you know? Windows didn't patch their software. Yeah, that's something new. CES 2015 talks about the rising popularity of domestic robots. I don't know. I'm not going to get myself a domestic robot. I think that's for people who are lazy. I don't know. I remember the Roomba that used to clean your carpet or something like that. I used to throw firecrackers at it to see what would happen. So I'm not really interested in the domestic robots market. LG's new WebOS powered smartwatch is able to control the Audi driverless car remotely. Yeah, that's a great idea, guys. Let's build a watch that can control a car. I think we can all see the implications of something that silly. Apple raised its prices for apps in the App Store. Well, there's something new. The most wealthy company in the world raising prices. I don't know why people buy Apple stuff. I simply don't. It's overpriced. And people think it's, some kind of woman in a special group for Apple. Give me a break. Go buy a computer for $300 and you can do just anything that you can do with Linux with some $5,000 Apple crap. That's what I call it. The next story here on the news here is Facebook Inc. adds video technology with quick-fire networks. Video technology, well, Google Plus has been doing that for a while now, so I hate Facebook. I don't know why anyone uses Facebook. I hate having the fact to use it, but I wanna cater to everyone. So I do have a Shadow Corp Facebook page. Unfortunately, I tried to log in with my VPN last night, and it locked me out of my own account. Way to go, Facebook, assholes. Anyway, Intel announces a $300 million tech diversity initiative, which is cool. I'm glad companies try to make people learn more and try to research more when it comes to technology by giving incentives. It's an interesting thing because, a lot of private corporations are really only interested in the making money portion of it instead of the development portion. So, next on the news, 5 scientists claim they have solved heads-up limit Texas Hold'em. That's interesting because I've always enjoyed poker and statistical analysis, especially with poker and random number generators and whatnot. So that's an interesting story. You can check that out on Google Plus. On Google News there. And I might read a little bit of the story here. in a second, but let's go down to the rest of the news here. They slowed down the virtual reality hype. We're still waiting for good stuff for virtual reality. I agree. I think that's the next level, but it needs some development. And as time goes on and as technology gets better, we're going to see a little bit of virtual reality creeping into the gaming industry. I think that's something that we're really going to enjoy. We do have a pretty good interactivity rating when we use our gaming consoles, being able to stream our games and whatnot, but we're not really immersed in it as we see in the movies, and I think that's what a lot of virtual reality designers are trying to do, is get us to the point where we can be like the lawnmower man in the movie. That's really what we're looking at when it comes down to virtual reality. We really want that immersive experience when we're playing gaming. Let's see. Next on the news here, T-Mobile chief intends to spend 2015 delivering on predictions. Who cares about T-Mobile? Amazon Fire Phone. I don't care about that either. You shouldn't either. But hey, to each to his own. Everybody's trying to build a new phone day. When you get into these people who are designing phones now, they're basically just tracking devices. So, I mean, you get a company like Amazon, like, it's not enough that they have all your information, Pretty soon you're going to have these phones with these tubes on it, so you can give a urine sample so they can make sure who you are when you log into your Facebook account. Man. See, Apple's HomeKit rollout to require Apple TV for remote Siri control. Apple, I really don't care about you. The $1 million question about Android TV. I don't know. I'll stick with my Netflix. So there's the news. I did want to touch back on that Texas Hold'em, because that really does interest me. Where it says 5 scientists claim they have solved heads-up limit Texas Hold'em. And I'll read the story to you a little bit. If you grew up thinking that an imperfect information game such as Texas Hold'em could ever be solved by a man or machine, well, then think again. According to the study that appeared in Science magazine on January 9th, a group of scientists from the University of Alberta has not only found a way to solve the game, but they had also published research that provides their ambitious claim. And over the past years, Michael Bowling, Neil Birch, Michael Johnson, and Askari Temlin worked hard to achieve their goal, and today they came out with a computer program named Cepheus, Cepheus, a bot that they assure can be beaten by any human player. It can't be beaten by any human player, ever. Well, that's a pretty high claim to say that you can never beat that. That's a pretty good claim. Here we announce that the heads-up limit Texas Hold'em is now essentially weakly solved, the study's abstract writer said. According to the group's findings, their system does not guarantee to win money on every single hand, but in the long run, if you looked at all the hands that could happen and you averaged all those, and the computer can't be losing at a losing rate. So, well, that could be said with anything. I mean, if you play the statistics, patience is one of the most important virtues when you're playing Texas Hold'em. I do play a lot of that game online, and if you are patient and you play the hands based on the statistics, you can come out a winner. You just have to have patience based on the other hand, because a lot of the information and the analysis is based on how many players are there and what the other player's hands are, or what cards are showing. So it's interesting. I'll put that in the show notes. If not, that's on Google News, so you want to check that out. Next thing we're going to get to here is the questions. We're already at 9 minutes here, so we're going to spend the last portion of the show here going through the questions, which we had quite a few good ones here. We're going to start with Ryan O'Donnell here. He says, have I ever been in a situation where management did not take my advice, and what was the outcome? Oh, Ryan, too many times. Very, very many, too many times. It comes down to a point where they don't want to spend money. They don't want to spend money for security. They don't want to spend money for this. They'd rather put it in their pocket. And what happens in the end? The exact same thing that the IT guys say is going to happen. Okay, well, somebody hacked our database and destroyed our entire network. Oh, it's your fault. You should have told us about this. And then trying to tell the CEO or the board of directors that you tried to explain this. Well, you might as well just give up your pink slip right there. And that's how a lot of IT guys feel. You put out memos, you try to maintain security, but when it comes down to spending a little bit of money for that security at a smaller company or medium-sized company, you can forget about that. Ryan also asks, policies and procedures, do they really work, as in the civilian side of the house? No, they don't. Policies and procedures are written by people who don't, or those procedures don't apply. I think policies and procedures to a point work if you're going to follow them. But when you have no oversight, policies and procedures are really meaningless. So I don't think that policies and procedures 100% work. Some of them do, but you'd have to run a study on that to see exactly which policies you're talking about, because that's a very broad statement, which policies and which procedures in what environment. So you have to check that out. Next, Steve Berry asks, are VPN services a good deal to prevent hacking? And for who? What's the trade-off? What's the prices? And can Linux OS do the same thing with properly organized clubs to utilize shared VPN services? Well, what you have to realize about VPN services is that the NSA now is cracking down real hard on trying to break those too. VPN services, there's a couple free ones out there, but you never really know who's listening. You have to understand, when you're sending your data out to a VPN, you're sending it to a server. Even though it's encrypted, the person running the VPN service could be sniffing your traffic at any given time. Okay, so you have to be aware of that. The best way to do it is to have, two-factor encryption, tunnel an SSH through a VPN. That's probably what you want to do. And can Linux OS do the same thing? It doesn't really matter what OS is doing it. I mean, it really matters the underlying encryption protocol that you're using. Whatever you connect to, Windows, Linux, Mac, doesn't really matter. It just matters what the encryption is and how secure the data is during transmission to avoid MITM attacks, which is man-in-the-middle attacks. If you have a weak key, that's going to be able to be broken. So, our VPN services, good. I like VPN services. They're okay. It is what it is. You use it at your own risk. Okay? Matthew Williams, what's the planned schedule for the show? Well, I think I've already answered that. That's a bi-weekly show. That's Fridays and Sundays. They'll be online, available for download, and on YouTube, because I know a lot of people have asked about that. And what podcasts do I listen to? I don't listen to any podcasts, to be honest with you. I have too much to do and too many projects to do to listen to podcasts. If I'm listening to anything, it's going to be TED Talks. Okay. kęⱧHDZ here says more about VPN. How can a layman use VPN, as in what services are there? Well, you have to understand what a VPN is first. It's just a simple account that you log into that creates an encrypted connection between you and the server. Okay, and which ones actually help? Well, that's an arbitrary question, because we don't really know which ones help. We don't know who's on the end of that. We don't know who's looking at the data, so like I said, you use it at your own risk. But again, use two-factor authentication, or not two-factor authentication, but two-factor encryption. Tunnel SSH through VPN. You have to learn how to do this, and I'll put in the show notes some sites to talk about how to use tunneling. There might be some books in the library too. I have 16,000 books in there. Check out VPN. Search for VPN. Search for tunneling. I'm sure you can find some books in there. And he says having services in certain countries won't help in securing the information. Well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about transmitting information, or are we talking about storing information? Those are two different methodologies, käⱧHDZ. Having information in other countries, storing any information on a cloud or somebody else's server, you're just opening yourself up. If you do want to use that, then encrypt your data and then upload it. Don't just send your data in plain text to some arbitrary server that you're paying for. I recommend not using it at all. Get yourself a $20 or $20 or $50 external drive and encrypt the entire drive with TrueCrypt. I think that's the best way to go. Luna Blitz asked me, do I think children should learn to code, and if so, at what age? Okay, well, the first part of that question is, well, as I mentioned before, one of my favorite philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche, you have to learn how to walk, you have to learn how to climb and dance before you can fly. So you have to learn the underlying mathematics, and you have to learn the underlying structures before you can begin to program, because programming is a lot of mathematical concepts. So you want to have that way of thinking before you start programming. I don't think it's possible for I mean, they can be introduced to programming what it is, but you still need to follow the steps in order to be a good programmer. We don't want people starting to program and putting things out on the internet that are insecure. And we notice every single day we have some newbie script kiddie PHP programmers who put stuff out there that makes like 60% of the web insecure. So no, I think that they should start with mathematics and then go up. But I do think that programming should be introduced into classes a lot sooner than it is now. And do I have any questions as far as websites for teaching kids to code? No, I don't have any website. There are plenty of tutorials out there. Kids can go and look at tutorials on websites and what languages, so just check those out. If one were to go to a hacker conference, how should they prepare tech-wise? Luna Blitz asks. Well, I wouldn't take my phone. I wouldn't take any devices. I wouldn't have Wi-Fi on. I wouldn't take anything. I'd take a notebook and a piece of paper and pen. That's pretty much what I would do. Shamir C asks, what's my thoughts on Red Hat Enterprise Linux? Well, let me tell you, I started to use Red Hat a long time ago when it was around the 5.x era. That was when it was still open source, and I used it heavily back then. The old Red Hats before it, sold out. I'm not too keen on Red Hat or Red Hat distributions. There's some people like Fedora Core. There's other people who like Red Hat. I don't like Red Hat because of the fact that it's sold out. It used to be full open source, just like Ubuntu and Debian and some of these other distributions, but now you look at it, it's all been monetized. So that's one of the big reasons why I don't like it. Now, that's not to say that it's not a good operating system, because it is. A lot of systems on the internet now run on Red Hat. So he also put on the what are my thoughts on this web page here about the 6 dumbest ideas in computer security. Well, I'll put that link in the show notes so you guys can check that out, but I'll read them off for you. 1, default permit. 2 is enumerating badness. And 3 is penetrate and patch. 4 is hacking is cool, and that's one I want to touch on too, because everybody seems to use that hacker word as something bad. And as we've seen lately, I'm not going to mention their names, but the foolish morons who screwed with PlayStation Network on Christmas, that's why hacking gets a bad name. Hacking used to mean something where you take something apart, you find out how it works, and you just enjoy doing that, It's gotten such a bad rap over the years, that term, that I hate it when people use it badly. You can read that yourself there on that website when we post that in the show notes. Number 5 is educating users, which I am all for. I am all for educating users. And number 6, action is better than inaction. Well, of course, that's just simple. And then, of course, there's the minor dumbs and the good luck things. And we'll put that page in the show notes so you can check it out, too. So we're going to move on here to the next question here by the next pack of questions here by Sam Smith. In my previous show, Sam Smith asked that I recommended to learn SSH tunneling and a couple other techniques to further analyze myself. Check in the library, Sam. There's plenty of books in there about SSH tunneling and security and hacking. You need to look in, search for those books, because there's plenty there. I will post an SSH tunneling link in the show notes today, so you can check that out too. It's a good tutorial on how to tunnel with SSH. So we'll look at that. The next question by Sam: is it a good idea to use multiple online identities, each within its own virtual guest OS? Well, I don't think that you need to use each one with a virtual OS or a different virtual. But as for online identities, absolutely. I would absolutely recommend never using your real identity. There's a lot of people who like to share things nowadays, but that information is going to be used against you. I mean, the way the internet is today, you can't really take that information for granted that it's not going to be used against you in some way, shape, or form. I know we all love to share. We all love to share with our friends, but at what cost? At what risk? So create an online identity, yes, but try to keep the personal information to a minimum. and definitely use different online identities. If you're going to go in and you're going to have chats and talk and be you, then don't use that same login or whatever, or that same email for financial information. That's just silly. Next, Sam asks, regarding my 30 terabyte password data, he says it's obviously not a text file. How do I manage it? Yeah, I manage it with a combination of things. Of course, SQL. I have a cluster of Linux servers that I use with all the information in there. So, yeah, it's a range of machines. It's basically my own little supercomputer, I guess. And to be honest with you, a lot of things are in text files too. I'll have 500 gigs in a text file here, 500 gigs in a text file there. But it's just a matter of conglomerating them all, I guess, in a usable fashion. Sam says, I have a fair grasp of Linux commands and shell scripting. Should you try configuring a server or compiling a Linux distro? Please recommend a server or distro for the beginner. If you want a server for the beginner, try Ubuntu server. That's a really good beginner version, and it's not bad either because it does a lot of things. You have UFW, you can use IP tables and whatnot, and you can set up a LAMP server, and it's actually a little bit easier than using something like FreeBSD, which I use for my server sometimes. But it'll allow you to install PHP MySQL and get to know how the code interacts with the database server. So, yeah, you can install a LAMP server with Ubuntu server in one simple command. I believe it's taskcell install LAMP server or something like that. I don't have my notes out, but yeah, use Ubuntu server. I always pronounce that wrong. Sam also says, to help secure my host, I would like to learn and configure UFW and Snort. Okay, well, UFW is Ubuntu Firewall, and Snort is an intrusion detection system, or an IDS. I would say wait until you understand PHP before you install Snort, because Snort's pretty complex on the way that it has to be set up on the network. I mean, you have to put it between your router, and you have to put it between the modem or your main connection, because it has to be kind of like a pass-through, so it can sniff all the packets coming in and out of your network. What else should you do to harden Linux? chrootkit, any others? Just search for rootkits, and some antivirus. I'm not too big on antivirus in Linux, but Bitdefender, I think, I'm not sure if that's the one it is. I think so. Let me check here. I think it's Bitdefender that I have installed on here. That will work pretty well to scan your system for viruses. So, yeah, it is Bitdefender. There's a free version for Linux. So when you do, you can install an add-on, so you can use it within your file manager. So yeah, check it out. Yes, to help secure his host, configure. When encrypting personal files with GPG, should I use a symmetric option or encrypt with my key? Well, that's completely up to you. It depends how you want to do it. If I'm just encrypting a file, I'll simply just use a symmetric cipher. So there's really no need to use your key unless you want to. It's all matters of personal preference, He says, also, can I encrypt directories with GPG, or should I use TrueCrypt for directories? Well, no. If you want to encrypt the directory with GPG, simply tar it up or compress it, make it a tar.gz file, and then encrypt that. You don't really need to use TrueCrypt to encrypt the directories. Just make it into a compressed file. And I encrypt files with GPG, then disks with TrueCrypt. Yeah, I would say, use your disk with TrueCrypt. That's what I do. He also says, I need a password manager and don't want to use any online services. Well, neither would I. I don't recommend any password managers online because I just don't. Unless you have the source code, unless you absolutely know that it's not sending anything, unless you absolutely know that it's not going to do anything with your passwords. Simply create a text file and encrypt it with GPG. That's the best way to do it. Next we have Lloyd Holt. So he's got his laptop with VirtualBox running. He's got Kali running on the box. Ubuntu on another one, and need Windows VM to attack. My question is, where do I get a Windows XP installation? Well, you can find them anywhere online. You can download an ISO from Windows from any kind of torrent site anywhere. So my best guess would be to look for torrents. You can get Windows 7 installations. You could probably use the key from my broke down laptop. No, don't use your key from your broke down laptop. Just keep that. So I'm sure you can find some keys online, and if not, just get a copy that you don't register, and make an image of it when you first install it, and then attack that. And then when it forces you to register, delete the image and do it again and reload the original image. And finally, we have käⱧ Jagⴆ, however you pronounce that. I'm getting a little bit tired of your random links there, Octopus. So we knock that shit off. You gotta post that stuff in the proper categories. And if it has nothing to do with anything, just don't post it. And no, I'm not mad. I'm just joking. Just stop posting stupid shit everywhere. And he asks, what are my thoughts on which Linux distribution is easiest to integrate with in a Windows environment? Well, it depends what you're doing in the Windows environment. I mean, you want to do file sharing. If you want to use file sharing, you can simply use Samba. Samba's just fine. It works the same way as Windows file sharing with more security. So it's up to you. You can integrate any Linux system into a Windows environment. I mean, if you want to try to integrate it with Active Directory and stuff, then you're going to start to have to look at Samba domains and whatnot. So it's really up to you. I wouldn't try integrating FreeBSD into a Windows environment. It's very difficult to do. He also says, what are my thoughts on security? Well, if you have the Linux system set up the right way, you're not going to have a problem with security. And security best practices between the interaction of Linux and a Windows domain. Well, the problem's not going to arise from a Linux side. The problem's going to arise from the Windows side. So you have to make sure that your Windows systems are up, because if you're going to use a Linux and a Windows domain, there's a lot of things that can be done to exploit the domain. So you have to take into consideration what you're putting where and why. So that's it for the questions. As I run through the community here, I see a lot of interactivity there, and the biggest thing that I see is people not categorizing stuff properly. For instance, Dave Bison here, we're going to put that into the news section, not the discussion section. So, as I'm doing the radio show, I'm having to recategorize people's posts here. And Chase Hatch, buddy, you're putting out some really good posts there with security, and especially the MacBook exploit bootkit. That's some funny shit there. It would be deadly if it was a remote exploit, but unfortunately, people are going to be starting to hide their MacBooks now, which is glad, because I hate Mac anyway. Yeah, kill me. Whoever has Mac, you can go ahead and shoot me. I don't give a shit, but I hate Mac. So there's some other good posts on there. Luna, you're doing some really good posts on there. I really appreciate that. Chris Casper, I just want to mention a couple of the guys on here who were taking their time to get in some posts and do some participation. Of course, combined employees, see you, right, Jay? Yeah, good luck there. Bargov Tandil always puts some good ethical hacking courses up there. In the Watcher, I think you're on drugs sometime, the Watcher. You're just going through and doing some crazy stuff on there. Of course, Dave Bison there, and Chase Hatch, and John Doe, Katie Thornton. Yeah, all those people are doing really nice, and considering the amount of interaction that they do on the community. So I did want to give you shout-outs there. Don't forget our QR code too. I just generated a new QR code which take you right to the information security page there. So you guys should really enjoy that. The QR code's pretty awesome. So you can scan it with any device and come right here. Also, I want to say, if anyone wants to get on a chat there, please let me know, because I'd like to do a conference here sometime within the next month where we all can get together, and I'll do a live Ustream, and we'll sit there and chat. And I'm thinking about maybe dressing up as the Shadow here and making everybody laugh. So I think that will be something funny. And just to mention, those of you who were looking at Ali Gornazi's encrypted file down there, that's virtually impossible for me to decrypt even with my resources, even without my resources, because we don't know if it's 128 or 256 AES. and we just don't have the resources and pretty much the time for the rest of our lives to decrypt that. So if your computer teacher is giving you something like that and telling you to decrypt it, you can hand it back to him, and well, I'd tell him, bend over. So I'm not going to get into I'm not going to get into insulting, but that's really irritable, having a teacher give you something there. And Dima Z, I haven't heard from you in a while. I've been waiting for you to decrypt my shadow cipher for about 3 months now, and I haven't really heard anything more from you. So that's about running out of time here. We're at 30 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and please check on Shadow Radio, radio.shadowsgovernment.com there for the latest information on the shows, and you can download them there. And yes, they will be on YouTube, and yes, they will be on my Google Drive also, just in case you need your local, snort of Shadow Radio. So, thanks everybody for listening, and let's keep those questions coming and keep those emails coming so we can keep this show rolling. Okay? I'm going to try to interject a little bit more comedy into this thing, but you never know what's going to happen. And apparently, or someone just asked me not too long ago, when are you going to do a show where you're just going to go off? When are you going to do a show when you're just going to... Because he said, well, you're always so maintained and you're always so disciplined on your show, so why not let go a little bit? Well, maybe, When I start talking about the prison system, you're going to start hearing me go off. When I start talking about law and I start talking about things like that, I'll really go off, because those kind of things really piss me off. They drive me crazy, and no one really seems to see that or care, because they're prisoners. They're not animals. Never mind. I'm not even going to get into this right now. We'll get into this next show if somebody wants to hear that. So this is Shadow Radio here, show number 4. What the hell's the date? I gotta look up here. Okay, yeah, it's Friday, January 9th, 2015. You hit peak, the coffee morning, when you don't remember what the date is. So we'll see you guys later. Enjoy the show. We'll see you next time.